Good morning, Napa Valley Unitarian Universalists, and welcome to our online worship service. I'm Reverend Dr. Leisa Huyck, and I am the minister here. And with me this morning is Maggie Ingalls as our celebrant. Whoever you are and whatever you seek, you are welcome here. Unitarian Universalists are people who enjoy and celebrate diversity. Among us, there are people of different ethnicities and skin colors, different cultures, different genders and sexual orientations, different financial situations, different ability levels, different gifts and talents, and different theologies. What holds us together as a community is not a creed, but rather a commitment to travel together on a shared journey. We hold in common certain values or principles that our association covenants to affirm and promote, which include the idea that every person has inherent worth and dignity, and respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are part. We come together to celebrate life, to celebrate our connection to each other, to share our sorrows and our joys, and to ponder big questions. In January, we were asking the question, what does it mean to be a people of imagination? In February, we're asking the question, what does it mean to be a people of beloved community? Today's service will ponder a little bit of both. It was developed for last weekend, but the giant storm that week made it impossible to deliver. Yet another reminder that we are not always in charge, not that we need more reminders of that these days. How does the power of imagination help us get through these kinds of times? How does beloved community? Today, I want to focus mostly on human imaginings about theology, and a little on what theology says about community. So, what is theology? Technically, the word means talk or words or stories about gods. But Rebecca Parker defines theology as a framework of meaning for human habitation. A framework of meaning for human habitation. Here are just a few of the questions theology explores. What is the nature of ultimate reality? How did the world get here? Why do things happen the way they do? Is the world a good place or a bad place? Are people essentially good or bad? How should we behave toward other people and toward the rest of nature? What happens when we die? Why is there suffering and pain? Why do bad things happen to good people? Why do people do bad things? What should we do when we see others suffering or in pain? In other words, theology is kind of a catch-all word for what people imagine in order to explain, as comic science fiction writer Douglas Adams put it, life, the universe, and everything. It is a vast topic which humans have been thinking about since we became humans. Indeed, perhaps being able to conceive of the topic is what makes us human. Although I don't know if chimps or elephants or whales or dolphins ponder these questions. Every other ology, every discipline in the humanities and sciences has its origins in theology. Sir Isaac Newton, famous physicist, discovered gravity, was a theologian trying to understand the mind of God. Many contemporary physicists and mathematicians say the same thing. Today, we won't try to answer all the possible questions about the meaning of life, the universe, and everything. And if you've read Douglas Adams, you know that the answer is 42. we will just explore a tiny corner of the theological landscape about how what we imagine can help us through the hardest times of our lives. So come now, let us bring our whole selves to this time together, and let us worship.
Each Sunday, Unitarian Universalists all around the world join together in lighting a chalice, the symbol of our faith. You are invited to light your own chalice at home now, or just a candle, as I speak these words from Reverend Dr. David Breeden. Our light is the light of the sun, keeper of all we love. Our light is the light of the earth, provider of sustenance. Our light is the light of all living things, life precious, like our own. Our light is the light of each of us, bound together in need and hope. Our light is the light of the cosmos, keeper of all we know. I invite you now into a moment of receptivity and reflection as we share the joys and sorrows of this community. We make sacred the milestones of our lives when we share them with each other. We have here a bowl of water and some stones. If you have a joy or a sorrow that you would like to share with all here, you can type it into the chat and then choose a stone to represent what you have shared. If you have a joy or sorrow that you don't need to share with everyone, just type the word stone into the chat and choose a stone to represent what you are keeping in the silence of your heart.
When we share our joys and our sorrows, we make visible the threads of love that bind us each to each and all to all. Now, let us go deeper. I invite you to get comfortable in your seat or wherever you are. Assume a posture of both relaxation and attention. If you can, roll your shoulders a few times and shake out any negative energy you may be carrying. Shake out your ankles and feet as well. Now receive a breath from the green growing beings of the world. And then let it out to nourish those green growing beings. Receive a second breath in and then out. A third breath in and then out. Feel your place in the cycle of the breathing of the world. Now, direct your attention to the atoms and molecules that your body is exchanging with the atmosphere at the boundary of your skin. Now move outward in your awareness to the seat that is supporting your body. And then the room in which you are sitting. Now move outward further to the building in which sits the room. Then to your street or road. Your neighborhood. Our ecosystem of oak savanna on volcanic hills. Move your awareness outward further still to our bioregion, the Bay Area of Northern California. Then the whole country. The American continent. The whole blue-green planet Earth. Move your awareness out further still to encompass the solar system. And yet further to the Milky Way. And further again to the wider universe, ever expanding into infinity. Spend a moment floating in space among the galaxies and nebulae, continuing to be aware of your breath. Now bring your awareness back to a particular spiral galaxy among the billions, the Milky Way. Now bring yourself back to our own solar system with its 8 planets orbiting our sun. Now back to this one planet, Earth, a blue ball with white clouds swirling around its surface. Now come back to our continent. Then our bioregion. The oak savanna ecosystem. Your neighborhood. Your dwelling. Your room. Your own perfectly imperfect body. Your own breath. Moving in. Moving out. Remain centered in your breath and hear these words. Spirit of life, source of all change. Now is the time of real winter storms. They bring much needed rain and in the higher elevations, snow. But because of climate change, they can also bring powerfully destructive winds and floods in places that were burned in the fires. We do not yet know how many more storms will come. We're both apprehensive about what climate change will bring next and profoundly grateful for the moisture. It is a both and situation. Our congregation has been hit hard in these past months by illness and death. 4 beloved husbands unexpectedly gone in as many months. A beloved sister and wife hovers between life and death in hospice with no way of knowing what will happen next. COVID-19 has struck at the very heart of our circle. And at the same time, there are also new reasons to hope. A new administration has been sworn in that is taking the pandemic seriously. It is also moving quickly on climate change. It is a both and situation. In the coastal range, the first hint of misty green below dead grasses begins showing on the hillsides, reminding us that even in these hard times, the force of life is powerful beyond measure, reminding us that even when those we love die, we still live on. Another both and situation. What will we do with the life we still have? What meaning can we still make? In this both and life, we have no answers, only questions. May we live the questions together, knowing we are ever held in love. Amen. Blessed be.
Our reading today comes from the late Reverend Nancy Shaffer, A Theology Adequate for the Night. Not God as unmoved mover, one who set the earth in motion and withdrew, not the one to thank when those cherished do not die, for providence includes equally power to harm. Not a God of exactings, as if love could be earned or subtracted. But this may work in the night, something that breathes with us as others sleep, something that breathes also those sleeping, so no one is alone. Something that is the beginning of love, and also each part of how love is completed. Something so large, wherever we are not separate, which teaches again the way to start over. Night is the test, when grief lies uncovered and longing shows clear, when nothing we do can hasten earth's turning or delay it. This may be adequate for the night, this holding, something that steadfastly breathes us, which we also are learning to breathe.
So much has happened since I was last with you in a Sunday service that it makes my head spin. Serious illness, death, domestic terrorism, sedition, along with the continuing pandemic and the climate crisis. Not to mention that many of us have still not recovered from the terror and grief and rage we experienced during the past 4 years of the previous political administration. How do we cope with all of it when we still can't meet in person, when we still can't hug each other safely? Even after we get vaccinated, which could be months, epidemiologists tell us that with the new, more contagious variants, we will still need to wear masks and keep our physical distance from each other until the pandemic is truly under control, which could be as long as another year. Then, too, we want so much to be hopeful about the future with the new administration, and yet we know that in order for our nation to heal, we have to look back. We have to examine our history and hold the perpetrators of violence and neglect accountable. How? What will it mean? What if we ourselves have been complicit in abuse without even knowing it? What would we have to give up in order to bring about reconciliation, restoration, and justice? To bring about a society that is beautiful and sustainable with love and justice for all? Would we be willing to do it? Why or why not? In times like these, people need a bedrock theology. A bedrock theology, according to theologian Sally McFaig, is a theology that you turn to at 2 a.m. when you cannot sleep. It is what brings you comfort when the world seems to be at its most terrifying, or when the unthinkable has happened and the person you love most in the world is gone. It is what you move from when you have to decide what to do in a situation you've never before experienced. It is the source of your ethics. What is your bedrock theology? Has it changed during your life? How is it working for you now? Today, I want to share 2 stories of times in human history when people who were deeply suffering lived into a new theology that brought them peace. A little over 2,500 years ago, a young woman named Kisa Gotami seemed to be living a charmed life. She was lovely and intelligent and from a respected family. She married into a prosperous family and immediately had a beautiful son. But then, every parent's worst nightmare came to pass. The child died. Kisa Gotami was beside herself with grief. She could not accept that her child was really gone and went from house to house asking if anyone had medicine to help her baby. Finally, someone said, "I don't have the medicine you seek, but I know a physician who does. Seek out Shakyamuni Buddha, and he will help you." So Kisa went to the Buddha, and he said, "Yes, I can bring your child back to life. All I need you to do is this. Go from house to house and collect a handful of mustard seeds from a house where no one has died. Bring the seeds back to me, and I will make the medicine." Kisa was elated. She knocked on the door of one house after another. But in this house, the father had died. In that, the mother. In the next, a child. In the one after that, an auntie. In the next, a whole family. Kisa's footsteps grew slower and slower as she realized the truth. There was no one living who had not lost a loved one to death. With this perspective, she was able to begin healing. She was able to have her son buried, and then she went back to the Buddha and asked him to teach her. He explained his system for letting go of suffering. She became a disciple, then a teacher, and finally the first woman arahat, or enlightened being, of that age. The system the Buddha taught his followers, including Kisa Gotami, presumed the foundation of Hindu cosmology, which characterizes ultimate reality as pure radiance, otherwise known as Brahman, defined in the Upanishads as eternal, conscious, irreducible, infinite, omnipresent, and the spiritual core of the universe of finiteness and change. In this cosmology, all beings are held within the ultimate reality of pure radiance, but often suffer the illusion of being separate. All have pure radiance at their core, but sometimes the radiance is tarnished or covered. Reincarnation gives us the opportunity to take as many lifetimes as needed to polish off the tarnish so that the inner radiance is revealed. When this happens, when the person is enlightened, the inner radiance shines so brightly that it cannot be hidden, which is why a person is said to be enlightened. Upon the death of the body, the enlightened being's soul merges with the pure radiance of the universe. Otherwise, the soul is born again into another body. The Buddha's new contribution to the Hindu theological world was to recognize that within the material universe, everything and being is subject to change, and all are interdependent, so that change causes more change. He then gave extremely detailed instructions for how to reach enlightenment in this interdependent world of constant change. The central message contained in these instructions can be very briefly summarized in the following way. Understand that there is suffering in life, and no one escapes death. Understand that change is continuous, and this can cause even more suffering unless you learn to let go of your expectations. Do not avert your eyes from the suffering of others. See it clearly, but do not dwell on it either. Instead, behave with loving kindness toward all and do all you can to relieve suffering by serving others. Neither asceticism nor greedy consumption leads to equanimity, so follow the middle way and enjoy the beauty of the interdependent world. The best way to work toward enlightenment is within a community or sangha of other seekers. Does any of that sound familiar? It should. We'll come back to that. For now, let's fast forward to Norwich, England in the mid-1300s. Norwich was a big, bustling city, the second largest and wealthiest in England. The 100 Years' War between England and France was in full swing, with attendant famine and suffering and violence. And into this world was born a greatly gifted girl child whose birth name no one knows. When she was 7 years old, in 1349, the first wave of the bubonic plague hit Norwich and killed half the population of the city. The plague came back in waves over and over again, clear into the 15th century. By the 1370s, about 60% of the population of England was dead. Can you imagine living in such a time? The economic dislocation, the hunger that resulted when laborers weren't available to farm, the massive grief and depression of the people. It had an enormous impact on the bedrock theology of both everyday people and the church. Having no knowledge of germs, people began to believe that an angry God was punishing humans for being so wicked, that human bodies were unclean and the source of wickedness, and that nature was the enemy of human beings. This is the theological milieu out of which arose Calvinism and its belief in human depravity and the salvation of the elect. People were afraid, and they did what fearful people often do, find negative ways of explaining what is happening that make them even more afraid. But our girl was different. When she was 30, she herself became ill, though probably not with the plague. On her deathbed, she received a series of divine visions. Then, miraculously, she recovered. Afterward, she took the name Julian and became an anchoress, one who is anchored by having herself sealed into a small cell adjacent to a church. Julian had one window into the church and one window on the busy market square. She depended on 2 helpers to bring her supplies, like food and water, paper and ink, and to empty her chamber pot. She wrote down her visions and pondered their meaning in a book, the first book by a woman in English, which she revised twice. In other words, during a time of global pandemic, Julian of Norwich sheltered in place for 50 years. It is believed by historians that Julian was at one time married and had children, and that her whole family, parents, husband, children, every relative she had, died of the plague. And yet her visions led her to a bedrock theology that can be summarized thus: the world is a good and beautiful place, created by a loving God, which is genderless, being both father and mother, out of its own being to enjoy. Therefore, we are in God and God is in us. Nature and God and love are all the same thing. Therefore, nature is a source of healing and spiritual nourishment. There is great suffering and pain in life. Do not ignore it. Face it head on, but also don't dwell on it, lest you become depressed and paralyzed. It is better to dwell in joy, to take delight in our sensuality, the workings of our bodies, and the beauties of the world. Focusing on joy and delight gives us the courage and strength to behave lovingly toward others and help relieve their suffering. Joining in community to serve others is the way to live a good, loving, and meaningful life. We may at times ourselves suffer, but if we have faith in the power of love, we will not be overcome. We need not fear death, because when we die, we are reunited with God, with love, as are all of our loved ones. All become part of the vast universal consciousness, the infinite love that is God. Some of Julian's most famous words, which she heard from God in one of her visions, are, "All shall be well, and all shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well." Again, did this sound familiar? It should. 18th and 19th century Unitarians and Universalists were profoundly influenced by not only Hinduism, Buddhism, and mystical Christianity, but also by mystical Judaism and Islam. 20th century Unitarians, Universalists, and UUs were further influenced by indigenous religions the world over, by the teachings of postmodern physics and ecology, and by humanism. All three affirm the continuousness of change and the radical interdependence of all life on Earth. Humanism adds the assertion that we don't need any concept of God to live a good and loving and just life. We can be inspired to do so by the astonishing beauty of the interdependent universe, and we can be guided by the internal moral compass that develops from our feelings of love for others. All three affirm the deep need that humans have for community in order to give and receive comfort, in order to act together for justice, and in order to serve others. In this century, Unitarian Universalism is being most strongly influenced by postmodernism. Postmodern philosophy says that each of us will arrive at our own theology from our own life experience. It says all of our imaginings about ultimate reality are just that, imaginings. We can make observations about the actual universe, but we may be missing something. Our brains may be big for mammals, but they are minuscule compared to the scale and scope of life, the universe, and everything. We cannot even know what we cannot know. So when it comes to a bedrock theology, we should just go ahead and believe whatever brings us the most comfort and whatever helps us be the best person we can possibly be. And then, says postmodernism, we should come together and share our stories. We should have open and curious conversations. As we learn about the lives and theologies of others, and they learn about ours, we begin to see that every person, no matter how wrong we might have thought they were when we first met them, does actually have inherent worth and dignity. We learn to respect others who are very different from ourselves. We deepen our experience of community to the point where we can begin to develop what 19th century theologian Josiah Royce first called beloved community. The kind of community in which all different kinds of people can live together in peace and love with justice for all. The kind of community in which we can deeply trust each other with our most tender and vulnerable feelings and know that we will be held in love. I am a thoroughly postmodern minister, so for me it all comes down to this. If you choose to believe that God is a loving father or mother who holds you close in times of distress, I fully support you. If you believe that God is a shorthand term for a radiant love embodied by the living universe, I fully support you. If you believe that all there is what we can see, and that is beautiful enough to bring you comfort through 100 lifetimes, I fully support you. If you choose to believe that you will be reunited someday with your departed loved ones in corporeal form in heaven, I fully support you. If you believe in reincarnation, I fully support you. If you're understanding that your departed loved ones' atoms and molecules dissipate into the universe and become one with all that is so beautiful to you that it brings tears to your eyes, I fully support you. If you want to remain open to all possibilities, I fully support you. If you have no idea what your theology is, I fully support you. If one day one option feels right to you and another day a different one does, I'm here for you. Whatever your bedrock theology is or is not, I fully support you. And I hope you will fully support each other. I hope that in the weeks and months of physical isolation ahead, you will tell each other the stories behind your theologies. This is an important step we can take toward building the beloved community. In the meantime, as we navigate together through these bewildering times, I'll leave you with these words from Julian of Norwich. All shall be well, and all shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well. May it be so. Amen. And blessed be.
We will now take the offering. Love is the spirit of this church and serves its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. This congregation depends entirely upon the generosity of its members and friends. All that we give in time, talent, and treasure is what sustains this community and makes it not just a sanctuary for us to return to for spiritual nourishment, but an oasis from which we can go out into the world carrying the waters of life. You can donate by going to our website at nvuu.org and clicking on the donate button. which is where the link in the chat will take you. Or you can send a check to us at NVUU, 1625 Salvador Avenue, Napa, California, 94558. So our website is nvuu.org. The offering will now be gratefully received.
Thank you for your many gifts. All you do and all you give in time, talent, and treasure are vital, not only to sustain this particular congregation, but also to building the beloved community in our wider region. I especially want to thank Maggie for being our celebrant this morning and social hour host last weekend. And I want to thank Janella Otel for being the Zoom host for our social hour after the service. I so appreciate everyone's ability to adapt when that huge storm took out both my power and my internet. Thanks to Brian Shaw also for his lovely music, for producing today's video, and for his willingness to adapt to the needs of the moment. Everyone is invited to our Zoom social hour, which will start about 10 minutes after the service ends. If you're visiting us for the first time, we welcome you especially warmly and encourage you to go to our website at nvuu.org to sign up to receive our mailings about upcoming services and other events. Our closing words today will be as familiar to many of you as your own names. They come from farmer and poet Wendell Berry. When despair for the world grows in me, and I wake in the night at the least sound, in fear of what my life and my children's lives may be, I go and lie down where the wood drake rests in his beauty on the water, and the great heron feeds. I come into the peace of wild things who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water, and I feel above me the day-blind stars waiting with their light. For a time, I rest in the grace of the world and am free. Now let's join in singing our closing song, I Know I Can.
Though days be dark with storms, and burdens weigh our hearts,
We extinguish this chalice, but not the light of truth, the warmth of love, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts out into the world until we meet again. Now, people of this beloved community, when grief lies uncovered and you wake in the night at the least sound, may you know that you are never alone. You are held in a vast web of connections, binding each to each and all to all, and the threads that bind us are spun of love. May you rest in this love and go shining. Blessed be.